This is an open letter to President Trump and Mr. Musk. Bravo, bravo, great job. However, folks, frankly, I've been through one revolution and one war. I have been through one revolution and one war. I wasn't part of the war, but the war affected my life to a great degree. And it wasn't, let's just say, the whole process was not very pleasant. The process that started with the revolution and continued in a war, the whole process left a bitter taste in my mouth and a lot of other people's mouth. Worse than that, many died. A couple of million people died. So my point is this: there's a war that can't be avoided, right? If it's a revolution, it should be avoided. Revolutions and wars should be avoided because it costs the people in the streets a lot. People who had nothing to do with the war, people who had very, very little or nothing to do with the war or revolution get stomped on during both of the processes. So, and here's the thing, Mr. Trump, would you say that you're negotiating on behalf of American people with regards to international matters? Which sounds pretty good. You say, I'm fighting on behalf of American people in international matters and also in domestic matters. My duty is to fight on behalf of American people. But in reality, who you're negotiating for, you're always negotiating to get more, right? Supposedly for American people. But the reality is that we all know, many know, that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard own, I can say, probably 90% of what you know as America. You know, all the factories and the production lines, and basically anybody you know working for any corporations, they're probably working for Vanguard, State Street, or BlackRock. So, in a way, if you're fighting to get more minerals and land out of Ukraine in your deal, this more that is coming in, it's not coming in to Joe Sixpack, or it's not coming into of the 350 million population. This coming in money is not going to benefit 349,999 million of them. It's 1% who have assets with BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard. They benefit. But the 99.9%, the people that you went and fried fries with, those people really don't win anything if one of the corporations that BlackRock owns gets a little richer or can get raw material at cost and they don't have to pay for it. Who is this money going to? Under normal circumstance, the money that you pay for the minerals of the land goes to the owners of the land. Find out who are the owners and why you feel like at NATO that you keep having to expand your territory because just people are dying to join your gang. Yeah, people are dying to join your gang because it's either join or die. Join or it's a frat house that's non-negotiable. It's sort of like, no, you have to belong to this frat house, and also we're going to do a lot of bad things to you as well. And tough luck. Or would you like sanctions for with that? My point is this: you're sanctioning people, you're attacking people on behalf of what you recognize as America, but which is actually three corporations who own 70-80% of America. The people don't benefit from a war or a revolution. Here's the thing, Mr. Musk, I'm afraid you got a magnifying glass and you're looking down at the shit that is coming out of these sloppy account holding of the government. Yes, the government is a sieve. There is a reason for it, because up to now the reserve currency of the world was dollars, so you could spend as much as you want. These dollars just happen to be sucked out of the system into other places in the world as soon as they were produced. That's how you can export them dollars and import irons, because you're just exporting paper to them. Not even paper, digits on the computer that you created out of thin air. This is my point is this, that somehow they're the bad guys. The Chinese turn out to be the bad guys, although they've been working their asses off. BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard want more, so these international conflicts have to be in. I mean, who do you think owns those corporations that are going to make money of building Gaza for the Israelis? Those corporations are probably owned by one of these, or two of these, or three of these corporations. So it's all about very few people at the very top who want more, don't want to pay high prices for resources. They want to have those resources at cost. So basically everybody around that resource has to live in poverty because we want that resource at cost. Either you give it to us or you're under sanction. Give us your resource because we want it at cost, or we're going to put sanctions on you. That's a recipe for international war. It's sort of like, either you accept my dick up your ass or we're going to have a problem. We're going to have war. I'm sorry, everybody is not Indian. Indians have this social structure in which invited imperialism. It's sort of like they really, whoever has the biggest dick, they're okay with sucking up. That's why the whole system, because basically in the Indian culture, personal benefit overrides social benefits. In Indian culture, personal benefit overrides social benefit. When I say Indian culture, yes, every state has its own culture and its own language. In general, I went to an Indian college that had pretty much from all over India. After 3 years, I can say for certain that personal benefit, every time in the Indian culture, personal benefit overrides communal benefit. And that's why you don't have a sewer system in any Indian city at 2025 on your planet. Because sewer system is a community work. No, what do I get out of it? Very selfish system, even before capitalism. They're culturally very selfish. Very self-centered, selfish, easily bought. That was the trouble with why the British were able to stick around for 200 years, is because Indians don't stand up to power. Indians suck up to power. That's the whole thing. It's sort of like, you're tell me what to do, boss. And it took like fucking 200 years. And Gandhi, who had to go learn from the British way, and come back and try to somehow bring about a solution to their shitty situation, but by at least, sending the imperialists out. My point is this: in terms of domestic matter, Mr. Musk, for heaven's sakes, you got your magnifying glass, you're looking at the numbers, that's very good. Oh, perfect. But when you are that focused on this, you can't. Here's two things you're going to miss. Two things. One is that you're missing the elephant in the room, which is the military budget. So you got your, binoculars and your magnifying glass zoomed in on finding problems where very little problem exists because they're already, don't have a budget as compared to the military budget. It's sort of like, the elephant in the room is the military budget, and you're going with the magnifying glass in your civilian budget and picking problems. Well, if you put the magnifying glass aside and you look up once in a while, you will see the elephant is the military spending. The rest is, can you see? In terms of education, housing, and food security and health. There's something there, thank you very much. But is it Norwegian? Here's the thing, it's not that you should, if you take your control off of NATO and necessarily the Germans are going to fight the Russians. No, if Victoria Nolan was not there, if your system was not there, the Germans and the Russians it's like it was another timeline. If you didn't want to create a nationalist revolution in Ukraine, which was doing okay for being where it is, what it is, just doing okay, that wasn't enough. No, you have to join our club in the NATO if you want to have the real good stuff. What for? Who's this good stuff for? The good stuff is for BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Whatever corporation this benefits, eventually these corporations are all owned by these three companies. So that benefit goes a very short way, from the CEOs of these companies to the front companies to the stockholders of the front companies, and then everybody has their money with BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. So it's literally handful of people who have some stock in these three companies. If these international wars that are mostly for worldly benefits, mostly for money, ends up benefiting these three corporations. Iraq war, again, these three companies own Raytheon and Halliburton and Boeing and all these sophisticated arms manufacturers. These three companies own them. Now what? You see where I'm going with this? These three companies own them. So you keep fighting these over, even Israel. Again, it's about money and land. I'm sorry, I don't think Mr. Trump was too far off when he said, hey, I want to have a casino here. Remember me? I'm the good president who gave you the land. At least I get a good casino out of it, correct? Yes. Does it bother you, sir, that because your casino is probably on top of a few innocent bystanders or people who just were born in the wrong place on earth, apparently? Apparently these Palestinians, everybody, has a thing for them. That land is cursed. I'm sorry to the believers, but if so much blood has to be shed for a piece of land, I think the land is cursed, not I don't think the land is clean in Israel, in Palestine. I think the land in Palestine has at least couple of thousand years of bloodshed on it. You would think you guys, stop, but to the Sane Society. Everybody has a thing for the Palestinians. It's been a couple of thousand years now. Anyway, my point is this, Mr. Elon Musk. Domestically, you've got a magnifying glass, you're going over. You look up, first you will see the military budget, and you say, oh, okay, magnifying glass out. Let's get some binoculars and go over this military budget with the binoculars, because we have to stand way back there so we can get a good look at it, because it dwarfs the other budgets. Here's my point, sir. If you stand back from the Health and Human Services, Human Services, who the fuck called you guys human? I didn't. Well, if you lay off Human Services and housing and food, if you lay off that and look up, you will see the enormous military budget. Then behind that, if you look, when you get your binoculars to look at the military budget, Mr. Musk, when you get that binocular, look a little farther up, you will see all the ill will that you're creating towards the tribe itself. You're creating ill will towards the tribe, one's own tribe. A lot of people are upset because they either lost their job or, know somebody who has lost their job, or the way, and the whole condition of fear is created in a society. When you create a condition of fear, whether it be this immigration issue that you have brought up, whether it be it the military status of trying to give some better military protection for Tesla outlets, and you just saw the guy shot the healthcare guy. That should tell you that, again, prosecuting these crimes to the fullest extent of the law is not really the answer. The answer is you're fighting the people to save the corporations. The solution, Mr. Musk, you really feel it's necessary to lay them off, say, okay, lay off, no problem. But we will give you universal basic income. Once a month the check is coming. In this way, you avoid a revolution. Or any other people you lay off, or those on disability, you double it. And anybody you lay off, you start them on universal basic income. In that way, you avoid a revolution. Or avoid fascism too, because fascism, the fascism is when the government starts stepping up really for the corporations. The German war, the Italians were in the Second War, these were all governments standing up for the corporations, German corporations. German people didn't have any fucking problem with the French. Neither did the French have problem with the Germans. The governments go to war because of the corporations. The fucking British have LLCs that go back to 1752 or wherever the fuck it goes back to. And we're talking about LLCs that have been handed down generation after generation. They fucking make shoes. My point is this: corporations is a big idea, money that goes along with this corporation, but the problem is very few benefit from these corporations. Very few. When three companies own all of it, and anybody who owns part of these three companies probably owns a big chunk of it. That is the apparently Uncle Sam's land. That has become the Uncle Sam's land. Three corporations own everybody, own everything. No, they don't own people. They're 50, 60 million potential employees. We have to see how they work. We have to accept their level of diligence to work. Mr. Elon Musk, you're producing robots. Yourself, your own company is producing robots that is literally is the idea behind having humans not have to get the fuck up from the chair all day long. That's the whole idea, that those robots are substituting humans as the AI is. So my point is this, so you're letting people go, you're sending them home without a paycheck, really, without universal basic income. Hey, even if the person has been working for the government for 6 months, from now on that person deserves a universal basic income. They have tried to do their civil duty but you don't need their services. Okay, fine, but they have been a human being and have been trying to do their civil duty as best they understood the job to be. Now you let them go. Okay, now you put them on universal basic income. You avoid the revolution. You know, Mr. Musk, again, when you put the magnifying glass aside a little for 2 minutes, look up. First you will notice the military budget. You have to go back in a binocular to get a good look at it. And then if you look farther up, you will see the revolutionaries. The people who, you know, are becoming homeless at a higher degrees. And you are basically those incomes that those civil servants had, even if they did nothing all day long, the income that the civil servants had was an income that they were putting into the economic format of their tribe to get goods and services. You have taken that money out of this economic layout. You have taken their income that used to go to this to move the economy domestically, that you're taking it out. Are you looking for a revolution? But you're not substituting that money? That's a recipe for revolution. A large number of people, unhappy people, you just put out a job and with very little prospects of income, because more and more AI is taking over even cognitive jobs. I'm sorry, I think even if you really think you have to lay off all these civil servants, you should say, okay, yes, thank you very much for your service. Here is your universal basic income starts tomorrow. Please be a patriotic American and go spend this money as a tourist in China, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Cairo, in Egypt, in Morocco. Please, here is your universal basic income, Mr. Civil Servant who worked for 20 years for us. Here's your universal basic income starts tomorrow. And you encourage them to go overseas and spend it. That's how you cheap dollars as universal basic income, dollars as reserve currency of the world. That's it. You starve the world of dollars, which you are doing. They will move on to another currency. Do you want them to move on? Salutes. If a revolution can be avoided, it should be avoided. If a war can be avoided, should be avoided. And once you realize that BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard is the ones who are the biggest beneficiaries of any war and or revolution, are these corporations. You're going to war for a few who own corporations and benefit from those wars, although you try to justify them in, in on religious ground, on economic ground, on you try to justify these wars based on on nowadays it's like on security ground. It's a national security. And when you say national security, it's again the national security of BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It's the security of BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and their assets, because nobody else owns any assets. It's like 98%, 95% of your population don't own any asset. 90% of your population don't own any asset. And somehow your system keeps telling the politician to say that, well, it's because those people are lazy and not useful enough. And I'm thinking, well, when they were born, you didn't give them a form to say whether they're going to be useful or not, and if they don't want to be useful, they shouldn't be born. This brings me to Mr. Tucker Carlson. Mr. Tucker Carlson, here's the thing. I saw your interview with this gentleman, very nice guy. I will talk of the gentleman and his views in a later video if I get a chance. But here's the thing about abortion, Mr. Tucker Carlson. When the Bible was written, if you go about abortion from this religious perspective, if you go about this, you have to understand, when the Bible was thought about and when the Bible was eventually written, seen supposedly, thought about and eventually written, who knows, but when that was happening, women got married at 9 years old. Around there, 70% of women married at 9 and the rest married at 10. Because apparently, according to Islam and other religions who have figured it out, this is not a religious thing. Apparently, as soon as a human female can reproduce is apparently around 9, 10, whatever. That's where they are. And the boys, 12. The bat mitzvah that the Jewish people have, that's basically saying the day after bat mitzvah, the boy can theoretically be married. And it used to be married exactly the day after bat mitzvah because that was the thing to do. Now you're a man, now here's your wife. So if you start them that young, and all their life the women are expected socially and economic conditions were as such, and the expectations were so low that just raising the kids was an achievement of a woman. Now your societies have become larger, you have more urban women, and there is a wiser man than I said once a very beautiful sentence that in the farms, when people were, in a rural area or however that this works between you when you migrate, in rural area, because children are assets. If you're a farmer, if you work in agriculture, if you're by yourself and your wife in the middle of nowhere and trying to survive, children become assets. Are assets, so more are produced than the land provides. Somehow, even if it doesn't provide, a couple of them die and we start over again. That was the mindset that you had so many reproduction. Urban living, according to this wise gentleman, is children are a burden, they're not an asset. The asset that the children are in the farm is they can pull their weight. They can be useful around the farm. There's so many things to do around the farm that they can be useful. And they start them young. pick berries, wash this, clean that, things to do for an income for a family so they can survive. In the city, there is nothing to do for these children in those terms. They're not an asset. They don't create anything. They don't add value by moving a bucket from here to there. They don't any add value. What they do is that they're just liability. Kids in cities, they're liabilities. But this you can't reverse this process of, well, you can try, maybe you can reverse in order for your population to increase, you have to reverse the process of migration. Basically push people from the cities out into middle of nowhere. I can assure you, if that happens, your population will double within 5 years. It's just that, if people have things to do for the children, and the children become an asset, not a liability. A child moves around the house and it's all liability because it keeps breaking shit. That's a liability. It's something you are paid for, has come in the house, and the child moves because he's confined to 12 square feet after school. After school, you're confined to 300 square feet. Average area that a child has access to after school is about, the size of maybe his living room and his bedroom and his kitchen. But this is not the case with, children in a rural area. After school, you just go start doing add some productivity to the farm. Expected and done, and everything worked out well. But the process of deurbanization, you can try it, but it's a cultural thing. You don't want to shock therapy your people. Encourage them, give out land in rural areas to couples free, or something close to free. Just put down some stipulations that they can't sell it for 50 years or something like that. Sell it or lease it. They have to live on it. If they want to take it, they have to live on it, or leave it there. And there is no compulsion that you buy it, you take it, you have to do something on it, but you can't do anything else with it. Either you work on it or stays vacant. But at least it gives an option, and I kind of doubt even very few people will. Many will take the land, but very few. I don't know what percentage will take it upon themselves to move to the rural area as opposed to stay in the city and keeping the land outside the city. But I think, again, it encourages development. And once they start developing those lands that you just gave them for free, once they start developing them, they may end up liking the land and moving, their small family there. And in that case, you will get a lot of children. That's the only way. And this ban abortion, folks, Mr. Tucker Carlson, not only they were marrying at 9 years old, 10 years old, 11, 12-year-old girls who were only expected to be mothers, so they didn't mind having 12 kids. That was the highest expectation, is to be a mother. If your emphasis is on that, Bible is your book. If Bible is your book, emphasis on that. That would mean you got to be Amish, basically. Don't expect anything from your women, because they're not forced to get educated and go to university, but it's a kind of expectation that why don't you play with your brain a little instead of raising a kid who you have to teach? Why don't you train your brain for a little longer? After 18 years old, why don't we let the women in our tribe, first of all, they can't marry until 18 because they got to finish their education. And going to school at 12, you force them not to have an abortion. So a 12-year-old mother You're looking for a bunch shitty next generation if you force a 12-year-old to have a kid. Who's supposed to raise the kid? They have to raise each other? The mother and the kid have to raise each other? Who's going to be the adult in that relationship? Those times when you force the girl, the 12-year-old girl, to have a kid that she just happened to get from his boyfriend, those times were the times that they were extended families. And if this girl does happen to her, the family would raise the kid. They will somehow come up with some kind of an explanation with the extended family that where this kid came from, and the family would raise the kid. But for that, you need an extended family. You don't have an extended family. So you have a 12-year-old who doesn't have any relationship with the aunts and the uncles, and they all know nuclear families, and even the nuclear family has become a single parent family, and then this is single parent family which has had one kid, one daughter, and this daughter got pregnant. Now this father or mother that was barely paying for himself, and this 13-year-old teenager, now that father has to pay for this daughter and the kid that has just come out of this daughter. And who's going to be the adult? And the guy just got laid off because his job was dependent on the income that he was making by providing some kind of service to a bunch of civil servants. The civil servants are out of job, or not even out of job. They're saving because they're worried they may be out of job tomorrow. So they're not spending. People whose livelihood is dependent on their spending, now they're not making money, so they're out of a job. You're halting the whole economy. Are you looking for a revolution? I've been through one. It's not fun. Salute. Folks, my friend, if I can call you my friend, President Trump, with regards to international matter, any kind of war or altercation at the end of the day is for the benefit of these three corporations: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. Everybody has this information. They all know that these three companies own basically everybody. And any kind of win that Mr. Trump, any kind of win, President Trump, any kind of international win that you think of that is for America, it's real that you want to have by either, by force or by peace, however you want to will yourself in around the world. Remember that wherever you're wielding yourself by threats and force and sanctions, and wherever you're wielding your power, you're wielding it not on behalf of American people, you're wielding it on behalf of BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, because 95% of American people have no considerable interest in these three corporations. None have very considerable, 90% have no considerable interest in these corporations, except that they may be working for them. That means basically if you work for this corporation which is owned 80% by BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard, that means you're actually working for one of these three corporations. And folks, trying to suppress this, it's a bad way to go domestically. That's a recipe for revolution. If you mistreat, if you don't look up and see the logic behind the fact that when you're starving, when you put a lot of people out of work and you cancel a lot of contracts, and government contract, very lucrative contract, cancel them, basically push on the little guy, who are actually doing things, you take them out of the picture without the universal basic income, I'm not sure what are you trying to achieve. If it's a revolution, that's the right path. If you don't want a revolution, you better start, handing out with thanks to all these civil servants, thank them for their service and start them on universal basic income. Just tell them to go and spend it somewhere else. Because if they spend it in the United States, it only goes to these profit of these three corporations. This is something that you're giving people, the people are spending, and at the end of the day, their profits of this added productivity, all the added productivity and profit ends up with these three corporations. Basically, everybody's working for these three corporations. All the politicians who are working for rich people, those rich people that have the money to give to these politicians, those rich people are rich because they are part of BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard, or part of corporations that are owned majority by these three corporations. So, from the politician to the garçon, from the politician to the waiter, they're all working for these three corporations. And somehow you're telling me that invading Iraq or taking over Syrian oil is benefiting Joe Schmo. In what way, sir? So it's all about these corporations and people who own these corporations. If you don't consider that and stop fighting on behalf of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, you can pretty much stay on the good side of everybody. Everybody would love to live under such an empire that the emperor does not takes the position of the minority. When the emperor starts going for what benefits a small minority, that's when the emperor is in danger. When you look after the benefit of the majority, you can sleep well at night. And going to war, at the end of which and during which only these three corporations get rich because they acquire some assets through some government auction that was selling because the asset needed a lot of investment, so BlackRock bought it for a penny on the dollar, because only BlackRock, through its corporations, sub-corporations, has the financing capacity, has the credit, has the assets to invest in that land enough to make it work. So BlackRock is the main beneficiary of that government auction, which will be held after Ukraine hands over whatever land, uncontaminated land that is left for Ukraine, with a lot of boneyards around it. Salute. These three corporations are winning during the war, and along with these you can add the JP Morgan Chase too, and a few other ones at top. Are you fucking kidding me? My point is this, Mr. Musk, please look up. The military budget, you need a binocular for that. Put aside the fucking magnifying glass. Get a binocular and look at the military budget. After that, look at the unhappy people above you that are about to, they're standing there as barbarians at the gate. You call them barbarians because you think they should be okay. They're not okay. They're creating so much fear in them. Some you're laying off, and some are having sleepless nights thinking they may be laid off so they're not spending money. They're saving as much as they can. Are you trying to do shock therapy? To what end? If you need to have universal basic income, you need to have universal basic income. You bring it up logically in the House, in the Senate. You bring it up logically and say, yes, we have a problem. We don't have job for our citizens. So those who have been laid off, the Senate will declare a universal basic income program and start sending checks out. And please visit Afghanistan as tourists, visit Chile, visit Argentina, visit Italy, visit France, visit China, visit India. Try to spend this money anywhere else but United States. That's a patriotic thing to do. End of story. And in this way you keep dollars as a reserve currency of the world, as well as educating your population, having them wise, well-traveled, internationally traveled, citizens. How like Mr. Elon Musk likes to say, how super is that? How super is that having your printing out checks of dollars, giving it to your citizens and telling them they're to spend it overseas, and after a decade or so your citizens will be with, so worldly that you wouldn't believe. This is fighting for your citizens. This way. Print money, give it to them, tell them to go spend it overseas. Means we are thinking of our citizens. However, continuing the war in Ukraine, keep spending money on Israel, sending arms to Israel, these things, these actions, Taiwan, arming Taiwan, preparing everybody for war, let's go to war is coming. This is not necessary. It's just not necessary. Salute. The only thing for you that is necessary for you to understand that you have failed at educating your people. Mr. Tucker Carlson says about church, why we need church back. He said we need, his idea is basically we need church back because some of our people have grown a little uncivilized. So some, I'm not going to say urban, but some, because we have we don't go to church anymore. If we go to church, everything will be fine. Our people will become civilized again. Here's the thing, Mr. Tucker Carlson. Making people civilized through church was from the time, this idea was from the time on your planet that there were no schools, or very few schools. So church was the only place to, get some education through. Some education with regards to who you can fuck and who you can't. You were talking today about, our common folks, how you're going to teach them not to fuck their sister if not through church. And if you tell her this, I remember this because it was a little nauseating, but the idea that you were trying to say is that, unless it's the good book telling them not to fuck their sister, they may fuck their sister. But here's the thing, sir. The good book was when there was no proper educational system. So everybody read the Bible because at least it was some information. It was one book that was mass produced and it provided some information for people who had access to no information. Does it make sense? It's a kind of a Bible is a mythical history book. A little myth, a little history, a little myth. Fuck, all the other books are the same. Quran, and there's a mythical history book. Some myth, some. That's why they translate it and they interpret it because it's a It's a book of poetry that people decided to put together. Mystery book. Everything from everywhere. A little. But the idea is that this was proper for people from 1,000 years ago. Because this was their only access to the world information at that time. Yes, there were some really big libraries at very few capitals around the world. Yes, they were, but people who are born in a village, die in a village, in the middle of nowhere, they never see a single one of those books. So my point is this, sir. Going back to religion, whether it's Bible or Islam or anything else, it's not very productive. When you say the brother should not fuck his sister and this only can be accomplished, telling the peasants this is bad can only be accomplished through the good book, well, no, this also can be accomplished through explanation in a good school, which you haven't provided to your citizens because you were in Baghdad and Kabul. حالا بچه کسموش چال میکردین تو بغداد and Kabul. This is the job of the explanation, the genetic explanation of why you cannot have, sleep with your brother or your sister. The explanation of that is a explanation that a scientist in a school can explain, will explain in a proper school that about genetics and how if these genetics are the same, maybe the problematic kids of this union, those kids are going to have a lot of problems because of, emphasis on certain dormant genetic traits. Those dormant genetic traits can be emphasized if there is inbreeding. Bad dormant genetic traits by intermarrying or inbreeding, those bad genetic traits can be emphasized and eventually become active, and now you have a problematic kid. So physically, mentally, whatever. My point is this, that good schools in good countries like, Norway, Sweden, Finland, these are all explained in schools, and without the need of a church, the kids, when they grow up, they understand that, we can't do this with our brothers and sisters because it's like this and this and this. So because it was explained to the fucking kid at grade 3, at grade 5, at grade 8, there's no need for a church for that. There's no need to take the book at its word. Anything in the Bible or Quran or whatever other book there is, anything that is there that is scientifically provable, we're all good with it, we're all on board. Anything that is scientifically yet not provable, okay, we keep our options open. But the idea that we have to go back to the book with regards to reproduction, as I said, sir, Mr. Tucker Carlson, you want reproduction? Give land to people, send them to middle of nowhere, and they will create big families because a big family is useful on the farm. You have urbanized your people, and the reason for urbanization is simple, because cost per capita comes down when you go perpendicular. When you go perpendicular, cost per capita of living in the city is much lower than cost per capita of living in the country. This is a proven fact. So it's more economical. City living is more economical. And and also factory farming is also more economical. So, and your system is capitalism, looks for the most economic answer to the questions. you know, because you're capitalist based, it's always is looking for the most economic answer to the solution. The economic answer to the solution of people is urbanization. Lower per capita living expense, you know, less cost in terms of having to build roads, metros, gas stations. You know, keeping up a city is much cheaper for the number of people that it is hosting. Keeping up the city is much cheaper for any tribe, any government. The cities are, you know, per capita less expensive than countries, the country living. That's a proven fact. You know, imagine if the bees had to work in try to fill a whole shipping container of honey, and they don't made it small. Imagine they don't go to a corner of a shipping container to build their nest. Each one of them starts its own little pagoda in a different part of a shipping container. Imagine how less productive this would be. Trying to fill a big shipping container, one pagoda at a time. Pagoda, or that six-sided shape that they create, the honeycomb shape. So it's not. It's more economic, productive to, you know, bring all the pagodas together and form a nest, a bee nest, whatever they call it, beehive. My point is this: that again, this you can't go back. Urbanization, it goes against the everything capitalism is about. Going from urban to rural is going against the economic grain, because it's not economic. And you know, it's an option, but it's the only option when it comes to reproduction. Moving your people from the urban to the rural is the only option to increase reproduction, because unless you make children an asset for parents, that means they produce more around the farm, or be helpful around the farm, and they're an asset instead of being a liability of, you know, full-time a kid in a city is a full-time disaster, full-time liability. From how the kid walks and jumps and here and there, it's like an unleashed dog in the middle of the city. It's always dangerous, and it's always a liability for everybody. Who wants that kind of liability in the middle of the city? Are you kidding me? Salute. So your only solution is deurbanization. If you want a bigger population, your only solution is deurbanization, which is not going to be economical, and it's going to be a hassle, and I'm not sure if it will work or not. As far as international aspects, please stop caring for these three corporations. If you stop caring about the welfare of these three corporations, all the international wars can stop. Russia was happy with an independent Ukraine as long as independent Ukraine wasn't a NATO base and its minerals were not owned by the city of London and New York City. You see? Russia was okay with a neutral Ukraine, and it was a neutral Ukraine until Uncle Sam's managers went in and brought about a very nationalist revolution, fed a very nationalist ideas, a lot of money and arms, and brought about a revolution. Imagine some other cocksucker from other side of the planet coming to you another planet, coming to your planet and start feeding and financing some very crazy idealists. Isn't that Zionism? Zionism is a very crazy idea. It's very idealistic Zionism. Yes, we are going to go over that land, push the natives out, and they're going to be thankful of us for killing them and pushing them out of the land. And they're going to be thankful, and we're going to be friends with them. And we're going to actually force them to sign an Abraham Accord to bring it on paper that they're our friends from now on. Mr. Trump, the Arabs on the Arabian Peninsula are never going to be very happy with Ashkenazi control of part of their territory. It's called Arabian Peninsula. Just like you call Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America, although Mexico has more coastline with the Gulf than you do. So logically, meter-wise, Mexico has more front line with the Gulf of Mexico than United States have. So, and I don't mean go grab parts of Mexico in order to decrease their shoreline to the point that you can sell it as a Gulf of America. But my point is this. I'm not saying that. So don't invade Mexico, and Gulf of America is just, logically it's not logical because most of it, Mexico has more coastline than Uncle Sam's managers do. So, I mean, I mean, you can call my mother your wife, but you can't expect me to accept it. Anyway, I'm not Mexican, but I just thought there are some facts. I mean, there are numbers anybody can look up and see how much each country has coastline with the Gulf. Anyway, my point is this, sir. Forget about the Gulf. Oh, Gulf of America. Sir, other international matters, it's only for the benefit of these three corporations. You're not negotiating with the Palestinians on behalf of Americans. You're not negotiating with Ukrainians and the Russians on behalf of Americans. You're negotiating on behalf of these three corporations. We all wish that you were negotiating on behalf of Americans, because Americans could care less if Ukrainian minerals gets to a corporation that is owned by BlackRock at cost or cost plus profit. That's the only difference. Lithium can get to a corporation that is owned by BlackRock either at cost, if BlackRock extracted itself, or at cost plus profit if BlackRock has to buy from a local supplier in Ukraine. And so far you did your best to try to kill all the local suppliers. Kill or force the local supplier, the Ukrainian suppliers, out of their countries. So now just, now BlackRock can go in and they don't have to deal with any of the natives because half of them are dead. My point is this, sir. My point is this. American people don't benefit from any war. Neither does any other part of this planet benefits from any war. Any kind of military confrontation, normal people, 95% of people don't benefit from. So if you're the democratically elected president of people, the chief of the tribe, if you do something that doesn't benefit 95% and it really benefits less than 1% of the population, then you're not really a democratic representative of the people. You're not serving the will or the benefit of the majority. You're serving for the benefit of the minority. That would be BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. The benefit of a majority is America turn inward. First of all, try to make peace between Russia and Europeans. Stop salivating over the Ukrainian minerals. You can buy it in open markets just like everybody else. BlackRock doesn't need to own the lithium mines of Ukraine. State Street doesn't need to own the other phosphate mines of Ukraine, and Vanguard doesn't need to own the sulfate mines of Ukraine. They just don't. They can buy it in open market from whoever is selling. They don't need to own these. You're not negotiating with Ukrainian on behalf of American people who have 95% of American people who have no interest in these three corporations. They don't benefit in any way when these three corporations win something economically. So where does that leave you, Mr. President Trump? Sort of like, oh, I'm the president of the people. I negotiate on behalf of the people. These extraterritorial wars do not benefit the majority of my people. So I'm just going to let it go, accept Ukraine to be independent, to be a buffer zone. No, we are willing to proactively, I as President Trump will proactively sign a deal on behalf of my people that we're never going to expand NATO. End of story. It is where it is. And Germany, I encourage Germany to start buying gas from Russia. I encourage it. This is what benefits 95% of Americans. If you declare that you insist that Germany start buying energy from Russia and Ukraine should go back to the way it was. If you do that, 95% of Americans benefit. And if you tell Taiwan that, hey, come to some kind of a negotiated agreement for integration into China because you both are motherfucking Chinese, and I don't like to soil my hand with your blood. So you encourage a negotiated settlement between Taiwan and China. That would be a peace president, Mr. Trump, to be given the peace prize, Nobel Peace Prize, if you encourage a negotiated settlement in order for Taiwan to integrate into China. You would be worthy of a peace prize. If you encourage Ukraine to return back to the days of good relations with Russia and encourage Germany to buy energy from Russia once again and shut the British down, that would be an act that a president of peace would do. If you go to the Israelis and say, dude, it's enough is enough, you have to desegregate. If you don't want to desegregate and let the Arabs in, you should pack your bags and go back to Europe or North America. Before you have an international war. And believe me, here's the thing with President Trump. 99% of United Nations were on one side, and United States, Israel, and England were on the other side. The reality is that if United States, England, and Israel go to war against Yemen or whatever, next, whoever, the rest of the United Nations have already expressed their feelings. They're against Israel, and since you stand with Israel, they're not really for you. If they don't even want to be against you, at least they withheld their vote. My point is this, that, I mean, the answer is obvious. You don't go down that path. You don't want to fight the rest of the world. Me and Israel, we're going to fight all of you. You think that's wise? President Trump, right now you stand with Israel and the fucking British. And the rest of the world is on the other side. Imagine a football field. It's you, Israel, and everybody else is on the other side. You, Israel, and the fucking British, and everybody else is on the other side. This is the reality. In a football field, 3 on one side, and 190 something, 200 on the other side. No matter how you picture this, it's not logical for these two sides to fight. It's clear who holds the higher upper moral ground is obviously the 200. Your opponents in United Nations, which includes almost all the nations, they're right because they're a majority. That's your system, democracy. Remember, the majority have voted and have voted against you, against your actions, along with Israel and the fucking British. I don't know. They all can't be wrong, President Trump. They all can't be wrong. It's very presumptuous to think that I know better than 8.5 billion people. I know better than 8.5 billion people. Because all those people in the United Nations, they represent 8.5 billion people. Minus the 350, 60 North Americans, 500 million North Americans. Imagine all are for Israel, which I noticed in the United States, there are like maybe 20 to 30% of people are for Israel. And those 20-30% are, somehow religious oriented, very religious, and which is Mr. Tucker Carlson is advocating for. And I was wondering, I was hearing Mr. Tucker Carlson was so he was so amused by the evangelicals that there's such, I like them for this reason or that reason or this reason. I'm thinking to myself, I haven't seen a single evangelical that I thought, George W. Bush was evangelical. His whole perspective of crusade that he started in the Middle East with the continuation of his father's handiwork, another crusade in the Middle East, continuation of, all the US presidents who supported Israel, continuation of another crusade in the Middle East. That's a nutty idea that evangelicals have been promoting all the time. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, Mr. Tucker Carlson, you can't admire evangelicals that much because these are the folks who are for expelling the Arabs from the Middle East and having the Arabs become your neighbors in Maine. And if you're against having the Arabs become your neighbors in Maine, or as your guest was from Minnesota, as he doesn't want the Arabs and the Africans and the Hmong go in Minnesota and become his neighbors, if he didn't want that, he should have stood up and said, why are we going to Vietnam? There are Hmongs living there. We're going to get into a kind of relationship with the Hmong because we are going to have the same enemy, or we're going to, persuade them that we are going to have the same enemy. So they're going to go to war on our behalf, and eventually we have to evacuate them because they kind of stuck to our boot. They just stuck to the bottom of our boot, and they came to Minnesota with us. It's time to speak up. if you don't want the people of that area in large numbers to migrate to Europe, put all your war ideas aside. In other words, President Trump, please, before attacking any new country in the Middle East, call the Europeans and tell them that you're sending a couple of million at least of a new Middle Eastern nationality to their country. You are sending a couple of million new refugees from the Middle East to Europe, and you should tell Mr. Tucker Carlson that he should be expecting more brown and black people as neighbors. Because wherever you bring chaos, people like rats try to put the chaos behind them and go towards peace. If the only peaceful place you keep is your own home, everybody wants to come to your home. They will abandon their home, they come to your home because apparently your home is the only safe place. Because every other home is being smashed, because BlackRock, State Street and Vanguard have a interest in smashing your home. They make money in the process of smashing of your home, but if you're brown, black, or yellow, or red, or green, these three corporations benefit from the smashing of your home, and they benefit from the reconstruction of your home under the new management, which is the new management is going to be working for them. Surprise. Surprise, surprise. Mr. Elon Musk, look up, see the frustration of the people, see the fear of the people, and the only solution, Mr. Musk, is right away you declare universal basic income in effect for all the people you laid off and anybody else who wants to. Believe it or not, Mr. Musk, people, if you give them the option of here's universal basic income, go home and start traveling, or you can stay and work for the same check, believe it or not, some people still will stay and work. Some people because they want to be useful. Some people, probably the same number of people that you want, will stay and work instead of just going home and collecting paycheck. They will work for their paycheck because they like what they do. A large number of people. And others who don't and take the advantage of taking the universal basic income check, they will take the check, they will encourage them, you go send them overseas. Dollar remains the world reserve currency. Everybody takes their dollar and they can have a good life there, learning things from new cultures, different cultures. This is, Mr. Elon Musk, this is what you have to do. Right away start issuing universal basic income. Mr. Trump, stop negotiating, please sir, with all due respect. Stop negotiating, trying to get a better deal with Panama and with Ukraine and with Israel. Stop, because very few people benefit from those deals. People who are owned by BlackRock, State Street and Vanguard, or people who have stocks of BlackRock, State Street and Vanguard. And those people are very small percentage of population, 1%. Sir, as a representative of the people, you have to think what is beneficial for 95%, not the 1%. No war, no revolution. Salute.